And I'm joined now by the editor of the first two special papers of the 125th anniversary here, Pat Bickford. Pat, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So we're calling these special papers here at GSA, but I think many people know they're actually published as books, and now we understand why. They're awfully thick.
Right.
So we have the impact of geological sciences on society and the web of geological sciences, which touches on the advances, the impacts, and interactions.
That's right.
So how was it that you ended up becoming the editor of these papers?
Well, in 2009, the Society's annual meeting was in Portland, and Sharon Mosher, who was a past president of the Society, convened a committee to inquire how should we celebrate the 125th, because it was coming up in 4 years. And I was invited to be a member of that committee because I was at the time books editor for GSA. And so we talked a lot about what to do to celebrate, and there were a lot of ideas, and many of them have materialized. But one of the things was I said we should publish some books. That made sense since I was books editor, and that idea was accepted. And my initial thought was we should look at some books that would explore what have we learned in the last 25 years, since the centennial in 1988. But the opinion of everybody was, no, let's expand it a bit. Let's look at what's happened in the last 50 years. And so so my initial idea was basically this book, which would look at advances in the specific, or many of the specific sub-disciplines of our science, which is a very multidisciplinary field. They would embrace things like petrology, geophysics, geochemistry, paleontology, sedimentology, structural, all of these things. So that was my initial idea, and that's what book one is about.
Okay.
And then other people on the committee said, well, it would be good also to look at what has been the changing impact of the geological sciences on society over the last 50 years. And so that was how this other book came about. And that was less sort of my focus. I'm kind of a pretty academic sort of person, but nevertheless I had a lot of help in choosing the right people, and once we got into it, it turned out to be as exciting as this one.
And let's talk about the impact on society and what came out of this paper slash book.
Yeah, slash book, right. Right.
Over the last 50 years, what have the biggest impacts been from the geosciences on our society?
Well, you can break it down into a number of different things, but I'll cite three or four.
Okay.
The first is energy. We've always needed energy, but as society has grown and developed, our need for energy has increased exponentially, and the means of finding energy sources has developed enormously with new technologies and new understandings of the way the Earth works. And so the one feeds back into the other, in a sense. For example, the development of what we call plate tectonics gave understandings about where might we look for energy resources, for oil and gas, for example, or uranium. And then there's been new technologies developed, and of course the most recent one that everybody talks about is hydrofracking. And 50 years ago nobody knew anything much about that, and now we can get oil and gas out of rocks that weren't considered sources in the 50 years ago. So that's been a major thing. Another important advance has been in mineral resources. And just on Sunday, John Price, who's the author of the paper in this one on mineral resources, gave an absolutely stunning talk on the growth of worldwide need of mineral commodities. He used copper as an example. The use of copper has tripled or something like that. And and how and where do we look for things like that? And of course, again, our enhanced understanding of the way the Earth works, mineral deposits of that sort are commonly associated with volcanism and igneous activity. And so where does that happen? Where do we look? And so a consequence of that, for example, is the development of enormous mineral deposits in Indonesia, which is a volcanic island arc. Okay.
And what would be the other one? You mentioned there were...
There are others. And then one that I think is very, very important and on everybody's mind nowadays is water. Because as the world's population grows, the need for water continues to increase. And so managing water and water resources has become, you know, a major concern of everybody's government, ours included. And so we have a wonderful paper from a man named John Bredehoeft, who wrote on water resources. What are they? How are they managed? How can they be contaminated? How do we do this? You know?
Huge issue here in
Huge issue.
Colorado.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly.
Yeah. There's one more, and this is important, and that's what we call geologic hazards. 50 years ago, nobody paid a whole lot of attention. They were there. Volcanoes erupted. Earthquakes occurred, landslides occurred, you know, all that sort of thing. But nobody paid a whole lot of attention. But now, with enhanced technology, and particularly with high-speed computing, it's possible to take all these things into account and even make predictions, risk assessments, and stuff like that. And there's a major article by Mary Lou Zobak and a number of her colleagues on that subject as well.
All right. Well, congratulations on the job of being the editor of such prestigious papers at such a special time on this 125th anniversary.